Every time my partner and I try to talk about money and budgeting, it ends up in either a yelling match or us completely shutting each other out. Our relationship is super healthy otherwise, but this is a big sticking point for us. What can we do differently so that we can at least talk about this? Again, I love these scenarios. Thank you so much for submitting them because you're not alone. I think we all have these kinds of interactions where there's really good, healthy relationships, but there's one thing that we get stuck on in our communication. So when we layer the protocol over this and we think about the first R, again, it's what are you feeling? What happens in your body? And in this case, it's super important to get grounded so that you can access your curiosity, right? If I can get out of that reaction mode of like it always happens, or even that thinking about it always happens this way is part of the setup, right? Because I'm already tense and I'm already in my stress conflict reaction because I'm expecting that if we're going to have this conversation. So part of this is about me riding my own emotional wave so that I am not triggered just at the thought of having this conversation, right? So how do I, kind of say, I'm going to try to expect something different out of this, because when we expect something different, we also act differently, right? When I can enter conversations, really believing that it can be different, then I show up differently. And that's the first thing. So get grounded in that, know that you're feeling tight and whatever, and then access that curiosity and that empathy to realize that your partner is also feeling the same way. I mean, that's the thing. If you really have true love for each other, then you know that neither one of you is out to get the other. And so if I can access that information, then it allows me to just kind of lower my affective filter and say, this person loves me. And so we can figure out how to get there. Once I'm able to do that, then the interrupt becomes like, what do I want to know about this? And I think my question for me would be, just why do you think when we talk about money, we fight so much? Or what is it about this conversation that sets you off? So you're not actually talking about the budgeting, you're getting to the root cause of what is the trigger when you have the budgeting or finance conversation, right? Because that's what you got to unpack. That's what we got to get to, because if you can figure out why every time you have this conversation about money, one of you kind of loses it, then you can actually change that. And so the interrupt questioning is really more about, why do you think this happens to us? And we find when we start to unpack that, it could be things going back from, how you were raised or how you dealt with money, and how someone else dealt with money. We all have different relationships with finances, and some of us are very open about it. Some of us are not. Some of us are very frugal because of experiences that we had, and some of us are, more free. And so when you're not in alignment with your partner around that, it's important to figure out why and figure out how to get in alignment. And then that how to get into alignment is the repair, right? So what guardrails can you set up? What agreements can you make together so that when you do have to have these conversations, you can do them in a healthy and productive way, right? And so those guardrails looks like, when we start to have this conversation, can we write down, maybe make an agenda of all the things we want to talk about and why they're important to us. Sometimes I've even found that people exchange these things in writing to let each other process first before they have the conversation, right? So you can figure out what strategy works for you, but it's this idea that you are agreeing together what you're going to do in order to have that conversation, right? In order to have it in a way where it doesn't end up in a yelling match with each other or shutting down.